she's pouring from the sky. Stash some chips up. No fear of missing out. About to dip and flip. What? Now pump it up and double up is what we hit. What? This is it. What? Satoshi's pouring from the sky. Stash some chips up. No fear of missing out.
Damn, I feel better after having read that. Welcome, everybody, I suppose. Welcomes are in order. I just read the piece by my friend Gigi, featured in 21ism. And man, I got my eyes are a bit watery. My heart rate is accelerated. I've got goosebumps and tingling. Like that was an excellent piece. We've had a conversation along those lines many times before, but first I'll just say it's good to be talking to you again, man. An amazing piece, and let's talk a little bit about it.
Thanks for having me. Good to talking to you as well, as always. And as Matt Odell likes to say, bullish on Bitcoiners. That's what I am. So that was the motivation for writing the piece. Yeah,
well, it shines through, and I'm 100% with you. There's so many different angles to approach this from. But one of the things, we've talked about this many times before, but I think there's the overt creativity, and this is what we're going to talk about today, kind of how Bitcoin has influenced your creativity. And I want to set it up in two ways. One, the kind of overt, obvious creativity where you are somehow inspired to express or to create output as a result of that thing that's driving you. And in the piece for 21ism, you mentioned, you make reference to that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus is questioning Neo about these things. And I think that's great. And I'd love to get into some of the specifics of precisely what you've been driven to create and why, like why choose those things out of the abundance of things that you could choose. But the other point that I think, came through at the end of the piece was that Bitcoin changes people on such fundamental levels. And really every act that we take is an act of creation. Every word that we speak, every decision we make, when we zig, when we zag, what we get up, what we decide to do when we put our feet on the floor in the morning, that is driven by our desire to create, to express, to build, to become. That's what creativity is. So it's not just relegated to the realm of, art, for example. And this is the creativity that we've talked about before that is so exciting. And like you said, bullish on Bitcoiners. Why? Because this phenomenon is inspiring them to become different people, and in doing so, create a different reality for themselves and for the people that they interact with in the broader world. And that is a crazy thing, but it's also a crazy exciting thing. So take that wherever you want to go. I don't know which one to ask you first, the former or the latter.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I agree, it's a crazy thing. I still don't really know what to make of it, because it seems that Bitcoin has a way to take possession of you, not in a bad way, and even change you for the better. I think we see this over and over and over again, and there are so many Bitcoiners now that talk about it, that they got into Bitcoin first for whatever reason. Some might saw it as a get-rich-quick scheme, and some might found it interesting from a technological point of view. Some maybe got into it out of necessity via dark markets or whatever. And it seems that once you stick around long enough and dive down the rabbit hole that we talk about so often, once you really understand how the current money is broken and how Bitcoin fixes the money, it really changes you in profound ways. And it also seems that what Saifedean talks about all the time, that it seems to change people's time preference, that you start to plan for the future more, because you can be sure that your Bitcoin will still be around in the future. There is no way to devalue them in the traditional sense of how governments devalue your money, and nobody can take them forcibly away from you. The only way that someone will the only way to take Bitcoin out of the hands of someone else is to provide something of value. And that's very different than what we have currently, because governments and banks can step in and take haircuts on your accounts, freeze your accounts. You can just be depossessed by so many ways, and Bitcoin is secure to all of that. And once you realize that, it changes you profoundly, I think. And again, we see this over and over and over again in the space, that people, they change their habits even. People stop drinking, stop smoking, start working out, start eating better, start starting families, even like I did. I don't think that I would have started a family even as young as I still am if it weren't for creation. Bitcoin. Yeah, it's insane. And also I think there's this aspect, but I don't think it's all of it. Like time preference is definitely important, and lowering your time preference and planning for the future more is insanely transformative and very important. But it also seems that the realization that this thing can't be stopped and thus is way bigger than you and will outlive you and is way bigger than all of us, it's also something you want to partake in the birth of something that is way bigger than all of us. And I think a lot of people experience that as well. A lot of Bitcoiners experience that as well. Once you kind of think you truly understand it, you just can't stop talking about it, and you want to tell all your friends and your family, and you convince everyone to just get on a lifeboat, and just you want to pass it on as well. And yeah, I think the combination of those two things makes it really makes Bitcoin driving force for change, and I think also for creative output, because one way to tell someone about it is just to write about it, to create art, to create songs, and all kinds of creative output is generated in the name of Bitcoin, just to convince other people as well, and to satisfy the need to tell the world about it.
Well said. And what do you think, if you kind of look at consciousness as this kind of like chaotic soup of entropy of ideas and concepts and insights and perspectives, and then creative output kind of bringing that out of your mind into some form of ordered form in the exterior world, whether it be via writing or art or whatever. What do you think inspires that process? And for you in particular, what do you think inspired the particular forms of expression that you've put out? Why, as many people will know, you've written books, you've put together resources, you've written articles, you've done a lot of this type of creative output. What do you think it is about your understanding of Bitcoin and kind of seeing the light, as it were, or seeing the lines in the matrix, to borrow the metaphor again, that inspired that type of creative output versus anything else that you might come up with?
That's a really good question. I'm afraid I won't have an answer, but I think the question is as old as humanity itself. And I really like the idea that the ancient Greeks had about it, and just in general, how people of ancient times talked about different forces that are inside you. And for creative output, it would be the muse, how you are possessed by the muse, and it's not actually your doing. it's kind of something else is speaking through you, and you're just putting ink on the paper. But it certainly feels like that for me and for my creative process. I can't tell you where all this stuff is coming from. I've just been immersed in Bitcoin for so long, and I like, especially in 2017 when things got really interesting with the first contentious hard fork, I tried to soak up everything as best as I can, and I literally felt like a sponge. That if I don't put something to paper, if I don't squeeze anything out of myself, I would just explode. And I just try to not explain Bitcoin in a technical way, because I don't think that's the most interesting thing. I think you don't really need to understand other things, for example, an airplane or a car or the internet. How exactly those things work is not as interesting as how they change society, and the properties of it, like the fact that nobody really can shut down the internet, for example, is way more important than how all the protocols that make up the internet work. And I think the same is true for Bitcoin. I think it's way more interesting to think about what might happen if Bitcoin truly takes over, and also the path to it, why it's not outrageous to think that Bitcoin will be the one true sound money in the next 20, 30, 50 years. I don't even think it will take that long, but to be conservative, let's pick 50 years. And I think yeah, it's I just want to play a tiny little part in it to maybe make, if it I I have no idea how many people read my stuff. I don't do any tracking or anything like that. But even if it's like 10 people that gain a deeper understanding because of my writing, then my job is done. I think, I can die a happy man.
One of the things that seems unique to me about artists and or creative types that I never really resonated with, because I'm not a very, in the conventional sense, I don't consider myself a creative person, right? But one of the things that always interested me was that how they kind of decided that some kind of creative pursuit was worthy of the time required to do it. And not just like that you have an idea and you say, okay, I'm going to take the hour, the day, the week, the month to put the output in, or to create the output, but to know that the idea that you want to express is unformed and you need to like play with it and roll around with it and massage it in order to make it first kind of to understand what it is, and then the process of expressing it is kind of a whole nother kettle of fish. And in a time or in a world in which we all have limited time, and as you reference, kind of how Bitcoin changes your perception of time and changes your time preference, and also influences how you like to save and accrue capital and stuff like that. It's interesting to me that so many in the Bitcoin space have nevertheless determined that creative process, devoting time, and sometimes a substantial amount of time, to expressing something that they feel they understand or is important to them about this thing, is worth the sacrifice that that they have to make in order to do so. And by that I mean, like, when you write your book, or when I do podcasts, or when people do whatever they do in this space, that time could be used to probably in more economically efficient ways, right? You could be making money for that, but we've decided that this form of expression, our creative juices and our creative expression here, is worth devoting the time to. And I still haven't really wrapped my head around that. Do you have any insight into how you justify that decision making in your mind?
Oh yeah, I do.
I figured you might.
The way I see it, I do all my set-based, Bitcoin-based calculations with 100x in mind already. So whatever I do, I might be able to earn 50 times as much as at a regular software development job, writing code that I'm not interested in, doing something that just depletes my soul. If I can do something that nourishes my soul, and I just earn like $5 an hour and I get them paid in sats, then this is not $5 an hour, it's $500 an hour. You just need to sit tight. And so what I'm trying to say is there is a large opportunity cost of doing something that depletes your soul. Like if you just work a dead-end job, even if you make a lot of money off it, like I think a lot of Bitcoiners also ask themselves, what do you really need to survive? And there are a lot of memes around it, people stopping to go for a haircut and just shaving their own head with the ultimate sat stacking machine, which is like a hair cutter.
Razor.
And it all stems from the thinking, why should I spend my sats now if they might be worth way more in the future? So you want to delay gratification and you want to delay consumption. And I think the opportunity cost that comes with a fiat job is huge as well. You might be stuck in your job for the next 10 years, and you might use those next 10 years to pivot to something that helps Bitcoin flourish. And if you're a Bitcoiner, the line between job and play, so to speak, it becomes really not well defined.
Blurred.
Like Yeah, it's a really blurry line. I mean, with podcasters now, they like yourself, you just couldn't stop thinking and couldn't stop talking about Bitcoin. So you started a podcast, and the next thing you know, it's your full-time job. And we saw that with Stefan, for example. We saw that with Brady, and I think we see this also with a lot of artists. People that just like Brecky, for example, as well. He started creating Bitcoin art, and he sold it for Bitcoin as well. And I think it's very underappreciated that once you have sound money that doesn't devalue in the future, you're actually able to exit the rat race, do something that you really love, take on a higher risk, and you only need to find something that lets you survive for a little bit. And if you can take like 5% of your profits on the side and put it in Bitcoin, you'll be fine. And we don't have this in the dollar system. You're kind of forced in the fiat system to just play the game, and you're bound to the rat race. And it's also part of the game is just an insane amount of consumption. And I think Bitcoin offers one way to exit it as well.
I want to go back to the concept of the muse for a second, because it kind of insinuates you still have a choice, but you're so compelled to express something that it's just drawn out of you or pushed out of you, or it feels like you're, in the back seat and somebody else is driving. That's kind of the idea of the muse. And, to your point, what you were just referring to is like, yes, I could make more right now, but I'm judging my current income in Bitcoin through a different lens, and that allows me to give myself a little bit more license to let the creativity flow. Whereas someone might say, well, yeah, but you could just, if you worked in a different job right now, you could stack harder and your future would be better. And you reference like, yeah, but that feels soulless. Like that would hurt my soul. And I totally resonate with that. I think we've all been in jobs where we feel like it takes so much from us. It takes so much energy from us. And one of the interesting phenomenons with Bitcoin, as we said, is that you peel back the veil and you see the way things could be. And there's so much more hope in your perception of what the future could be. And you're so motivated to be involved in it and somehow to contribute to it, to express it. And I'm like, this is a really fascinating phenomenon. And perhaps it's never happened on this scale before. And we're just in the early days of it. And notwithstanding, not everybody will see it this way. But for those who really, see the matrix for what it is, to refer back to your piece, I'm trying to understand, and I know you've thought about this, so this is why I'm asking you, but what is it about seeing another potential reality, the one that Bitcoin represents, that is so inspiring for people to just emit, right? To express, to try to let that flow through them. And as you said, in your case, to almost be a passenger in the process of letting insights come to you and then regurgitate them out in some ordered form. Like what's that spark that's causing that to happen?
Yeah, I think to stick with the matrix metaphors, I think it's really, really hard to go back once you see what the true reality is. I mean, there is the scene in the Matrix where I don't remember his name. I think it's Bowser, maybe. No, that's not right. But the one who just wants to be plugged back into the Matrix again and just eat a steak. Cypher, that's his name. Yeah. Might be. And just he wants to wake up and forget the reality that he saw, and he just wants to go back into the matrix and be plugged in. And the metaphor for me is like going back to your fiat job and living a fiat life. And you saw how the machine works. You saw how the economic machine works. You saw how money works. You understand the difference between easy money and sound money. And you understand how we are all being exploited and played. And to use the terminology by Robert Breedlove, we are all slaves to the system, so to speak. We are all time slaves and time stolen away from us. And I think it's really difficult once you truly appreciate the system for what it is to just go back and say, please plug me back into the fiat system, and I'm a willing slave again. I think that's part of it. But of course, not everyone has the possibility to just take. Again, it's such early days to take a huge risk and quit your job and go all into Bitcoin. So by all means, I have no problem with anyone who just, as most of the plebs, they're doing insane amount of hard work and just stacking like crazy, like shoveling stones from A to B, building stone walls, and just stacking like there's no tomorrow. So if you have a nice income and a nice fiat job and it's not eating your soul, then by all means stick with it and just use the money you have to stack sats. I was in a different position. My fiat job literally sucked the living soul out of me. It was almost unbearable. And so for me, there was no going back. For me, I was determined, like almost 2 years ago, no matter what it takes, I'll do Bitcoin full time. Like, doesn't matter what it takes. And even if I have to change my life completely and, live on welfare for a bit or live under the bridge, I literally don't care. And so, yeah, I think it's a way of waking up to a reality that you didn't know existed, and just going back to how things were previously is really hard. And I know I'm not the only one. There are many people that quit their fiat, very well paying fiat jobs to work on Bitcoin full time. And I think it's also part of that I believe is once you see the opportunity for a truly bright orange future ahead, you want to do everything in your power to make this a reality. You want to help Bitcoin along the way the best as you can. And for some, this might be through art. For others, it might be through coding. For some, it might be through writing. For some, it might be to start companies. For some, it might be just to educate and evangelize. I mean, talents are different. And I think if you look deep inside yourself, you can be useful for the hyper-Bitcoinized future, no matter what you do.
Yeah, well said. And I think it's amazing that this thing seems to inspire that across the board, whether we're talking about, and I know, core devs are being sponsored in various ways today, but, at the outset, and certainly still in certain cases, this is people see the potential in this and they're inspired to contribute in whatever way they can and whatever their skill set is, so whether you're a core dev, whether you write books, whether you do podcasts, whether you create memes, people across the board are making the decision that, even for no compensation, that contributing to the success of this thing is worth it on pretty much every level imaginable, both personal and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is not necessarily a novel phenomenon. I think I really like comparing Bitcoin in general to the open source movement, which is way broader and way bigger. And we saw that in the open source movement. We saw similar dynamics at play as well, like people that basically quit their job at Microsoft or whatever to just work on whatever open source project full time, and like investing insane amounts of time without getting anything out of it. And I think the same I think the same is happening in Bitcoin already. And what we also saw, that just free open source software, it just ate everyone's lunch the last 20 years or so. Like the whole computer infrastructure, the whole internet infrastructure, it all runs on free and open source software, and everyone was forced to switch. Even Microsoft, like the last 20 years, they were against, like they called open source the devil and everything, and now they were forced to switch to it, so to speak. And I think it will be even more extreme in the case of Bitcoin, because just economic reality will force itself upon everyone, individuals, companies, nation states, governments, all of it. And I think the only way to go forward is to live in symbiosis with the Bitcoin organism. I truly believe that. And there will be people and there will be companies that are trying to fight it, like Peter Schiff, for example, to pick a funny like individual example. But there will also be companies that will try to fight Bitcoin. And it may look that they will succeed for some period of time. But I think in the end, this unkillable beast that is best understood as like an open source protocol and a living organism, of course, as I said multiple times before, I think it will just eat everything that tries to fight it. It's just the nature of the beast. The economic reality will force upon its it will just dominate monetarily speaking. And again, I think the only way forward is symbiosis. And some people realized it earlier and they go all in, I would say, and others will realize it later.
Right. You mentioned that, when you were at your former job, that it was kind of soul destroying. And, you included in the piece for 21ism, you included that line where, Neo says, "What's the truth?" And Morpheus goes, "That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, into a prison that you cannot taste or see or touch, a prison for your mind." And, the idea of slavery is very, restricted, obviously, right? And we can use that as a metaphor for anything. Not that you may be in physical bondage, but that you just feel like perhaps when you were in your former occupation, and many people around the world I know feel this today, it's like you just feel restricted. You feel like you're not living the life that you wanted to live. You feel like you're not accessing the energy you want to access. You're not able to express the ideas and concepts and insights and perspectives that you wanted to. And that's a bad feeling. And we use the term soul destroying because that's the term that bubbles up in our head. That's what feels like what's going on. It's just eating away at us. And then on the flip side of that, you have the idea of freedom, of liberation. It's so expansive. It's unlimited potential and possibility. And it's unlimited energy, and it's when you and to know that that's the type of process that's underpinning a lot of these shifts in perspective and in transformation, and what's happening in people's minds when they understand money, when they come into Bitcoin, when they see what this is all about. I mean, that's an alchemical process almost right there. Again, to go back to Breedlove's most recent article, and obviously if you haven't listened to or read it, you should definitely check out Masters and Slaves of Money by Robert Breedlove. But like literally freeing people. And so I'd love, if possible, to just go back to, in your experience, where you felt like you were caged, you felt like you were bottled up, you felt like you're eating away at your soul. And to what now, and we speak not infrequently, and I get the sense, like I see this energy spewing from you, I see this happiness, I see this all the output that you've put out into the community. And like, what kind of a shift was that like for you personally, both like on happiness level, on energy level, on wake up in the morning, what you do? Like what I'm getting at is like, what kind of energy did you access, and how did you feel it and use it and all that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the best way to think about it is, and again, I know that I'm not the only one. Like, there's so many people that were just almost depressed and nihilistic, totally. And just the current state of the world is not exactly rosy, even though by some metrics we have it very well, but still the world is in disarray, and like some cities in the US are burning, and I would say just polarization is at an all-time high. And also in terms of trust and truth, we're at an all-time low. I think people don't trust official government bodies. I think people don't trust any like journalistic source. I think we're also at an all-time high in terms of individual bubbles, and just everything is in disarray. That's I think that's that's for sure. I think we can all agree on that. And what I was in the same boat as a lot of other people. I was very nihilistic and very pessimistic in terms of the future, and I thought that things were just going downhill. And it's really hard without Bitcoin. It's really hard to see any way out of it. Like the system is set up in a way that you can just lose as a regular person if you're not in bed with any high politician or anything. It's really hard to just work your way out of it. It's really hard, and I think that changed for me, and I think that's also where my motivation comes from. For me, Bitcoin is the source of truth first and foremost. And this is, I talked about this a bunch, and I know it sounds really weird, but it's almost a religious idea. It's something to rally around. And I also love the piece. Bitcoin is a rallying cry, which it is. It's really something to get behind. And as I said in the beginning, it's bigger than all of us, and it's also, I think, a cause worth fighting for. The separation of money and state it's truly worth fighting for. Once you see fiat money for what it is and how destructive it is, it's really worth fighting for that. And it's worth getting up in the morning very early and just work the extra hours and put in all your energy. And in terms of the difference between working something that sucks energy from you, even if it's just like 1% every day or every week, as opposed to something that gives you that extra energy boost, like 1% every week, it's an exponential trend either way, and it really feels like that. Like I was in a downward spiral for multiple years just because of my fiat job and the things I was forced to do. I mean, you know, it's it creeps up on you. Like you're not super happy with your job, but you do it anyway. You have to pay the bills and so on and so forth. And they ask you to do something or to implement something that you don't necessarily agree with, but you do it anyway. And so it continues.
And then in your life, you need to do all these things to cope with, you know, that routine and that unhappiness, and that involves, you know, all sorts of habits and stuff.
Of course. I mean, there's a reason why when Monday comes, people are already looking forward to Friday, and they're getting smashed and whatever drugs they put in their body just to numb themselves for like 2 or 3 days, and then the next week starts and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, if you work on something like compound interest is magical, and it's not only in the financial world magical. I mean, it's mathematically impossible. That's how magical it is in the fiat world. But if you work on something that gives you energy and you're getting more motivated and better at it, even if it's like 1% a month, like after 2 or 3 years, you're like 50% better than you were before, and 50% happier, and 50% more productive, and it's just an upward spiral. And that's what happened to me with Bitcoin. I finally found something where I think I can be useful. I think I understand it to a certain degree. I think I can apply my skills to it. I think it's a very, very worthwhile cause, and it's also something. You know, it's I say this often. Bitcoin is just fun as well. You know, it's really fun to work on it and to work with people all across the globe and have insanely deep discussions about topics of money and society and politics and computer science and mathematics and physics and all of it. I think it's the most fascinating phenomenon of our time. And I wrote in a piece why I joined Swan that I have a quote on my wall, and it says, you literally have to ask yourself all the time, what is the most important thing that you could be working on right now? And if you're not working on it, why aren't you? And it's a quote by Aaron Swartz. And I see this every day. And, you know, for me, Bitcoin is the answer. And so, yeah, it's the reason I get up in the morning and just, I give it my all.
Yeah. And that, again, that's such a form of freedom, because it relieves you of the ambiguity of asking yourself or having to answer the question, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I in the best place for my, you know, for what I want, how I want to be deploying my energy? And that's, you know, and that's a question that so many people confront and don't have a good answer to, because coming through like the industrial cookie cutter education system in most countries, when you come out of that, people don't really know what their highest purpose is, to use kind of a cheesy phrase. They're like, okay, you know, if I become a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or whatever, then I get my status and I get a certain amount of money, and that's how I get through this chaotic life. But to be able to know on a day-to-day basis that you are engaging in and working towards the thing that you think is the most like valid application of your time and energy resources and financial resources. I mean, like, that is such a powerful feeling, I can imagine, you know, and I think a lot more people are starting to wake up to that, because let's be real, Bitcoin makes it pretty obvious that that's the case, you know, for a lot of people. It's like, well, what could be more important to be devoting your unique skill set toward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more and more people are realizing that. And you know, there are some people that are really extreme just by nature, and I would put myself in that category. So once I realized that, I just quit my job like pretty much the next week, and was like, okay, I'll figure it out from there. I wouldn't recommend it. Like, it's not the best strategic decision, but I think a lot of people are realizing that, and they're doing their best to, you know, just get soul in the game as well, and work for Bitcoin on the weekends and work for Bitcoin on the nights, and try to get some Bitcoin centric gigs. And I think, yeah, we saw that, especially now in the multi-year bear market that we went through, a lot of people just left their old jobs and found jobs in Bitcoin. And I think that's lovely to see. And I think we will continue to see that in the years to come.
Yeah. You say it's not the most strategic decision just to have that burning feeling and then just cut the cord and quit your own job and whatever, but your old job rather. But, Bitcoin gives you the sense that those sorts of bold, audacious moves are rewarded. I mean, you're living proof of that. I mean, now you're working with a Bitcoin-only company with a great team of people, great Bitcoiners, and look at what you've done as a result of making that bold decision. The things you've written, the things you've put out. So, sometimes, and it's tricky, right? Because those are hard decisions to make always. But again, this is one of the attributes of Bitcoin, that it's so compelling. And once you see why it's so compelling and the implications of and possibilities that it may represent, those decisions become easier. And there's a certain element of the idea of fate involved, where you just think, this is the type of thing that you jump, right? This is the type of thing that you take the leap of faith. And if that attitude of your doing so can align with what this is, and you can really try to find that path in you that is, your unique value proposition, what you're good at, your skill set, and what that thing and the element of that thing within Bitcoin. And if you can kind of bring those two things together, then I guess the faith is that it'll pan out okay. And I think you're probably a great living example of that.
Yeah, but as all great living examples, I suffer from survivor bias. So I'm sure there are plenty of people that did the same thing, and they didn't make it, and
they lacked conviction.
Yeah, but it's not only conviction. I mean, I was super lucky as well. I have a great support network, not only in the Bitcoin world, but also in the quote unquote real world. And I wouldn't be able to do it without those people. And I'm still, kind of young. And even though I just started a family and we just have a kid now, I was able to take that risk. If you have to feed like 2 or 3 or 4 kids, and or you have a mortgage to pay off or something, you wouldn't have been able to do what I did. So don't take me as an example. Again, it's not.
Got it. Disclaimer noted.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we've gone way over the time limit here, but the last question for you is on the thinking about creativity and output and things that you're working on. What's coming up for you? What are the things that you are working on? What are you excited about in the next 3 to 6 months?
There's so much going on. Like I'm just excited to be able to work on Bitcoin full time now. It's a dream come true. So thanks for Swan and the team that they believe in me and they brought me on board, and that's really, really great. So I'm extremely thankful that I have this opportunity. In terms of creativity, I'm writing a second book, so that's the biggest thing probably. I still have some articles to write as well, but I try to focus on the book now. I have a time plan set out for myself, and I try to be as disciplined as I can be. So I get up very early and I try to write for 1 hour, maybe 2 hours in the morning, and I write very late at night when my daughter is asleep. So I'm chugging along, and it will be 21 chapters again, and the book will be called 21 Ways to Look at Bitcoin. And I want it to be a very comprehensive work. Like 21 lessons was like a long tweet storm, pretty much. And the 21 Ways is already longer than 21 lessons was. So I've written 4 chapters now, and it's already like super long. And I hope to be done with it in like Q3 of 2021, and my deadline is like last day of 2021. It has to be released in 2021. There's no other way around it. And so that's what I'm working on currently.
I got it. It's super exciting. I cannot wait to read it. But I got to ask you, in the writing process, and you set out those times where you're just like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to try to put pen to paper and get it out. Do you just like create the framework, maybe the chapter framework or the concept or idea, and then just dump and worry about ordering the thoughts and all that kind of stuff later? Like, give me a little insight on the writing, because I'm sure a lot of people are getting the itch to say, I want to express myself through words with this stuff. But, writing is sometimes really determining. We all have those insights, but getting them out on paper in an ordered, coherent fashion can sometimes be more easily said than done,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm not even sure if I'm a great person to answer that. I still don't see myself as a writer. Like, I'm a programmer first and foremost. I see myself as an engineer and like somewhat of a
You're just bragging now,
scientist.
You're just bragging now.
Not at all. Like 21 Lessons was pretty much the first thing I ever wrote, and I'm not even a native speaker, so I'm surprised that people liked it that much. But I see, like, I think my programming background and being somewhat structured actually helps. So I definitely try to lay out beforehand what I want to say and basically condense. Before I even start writing the long form, condense it in like a paragraph or something that would be like a tweet storm or something. Or if you can put what you're trying to write in the tweet, you're already 50% there, because just expanding it is really easy, I think. But condensing it down to the main points, I think, is really hard. So doing that first really helps. And for example, for 21 Ways now, I have a table of contents. So I kind of, it took me like a month to write that, but I think I have a basic idea of what the 21 chapters will be about, and I have like a list of bullet points of what I want to hit, and this is already like 15 pages long, so I'm kind of structured when it comes to that, and now I'm just doing my best to sit down and write. And luckily, as long as I write for myself, I don't seem to suffer too much from writer's block. If I have to write something for someone else that where I don't have like the full creative permission to write what I want, then it's really hard for me. I suffer writer's block like every sentence. But if I can't just write what I want, then it's kind of, I still feel like the sponge, it just flows out of me if I squeeze hard enough. And squeezing hard enough is just being disciplined and writing every day.
Yeah, well, don't try to control the muse, right? You got to let that thing free.
That's true.
Well, Gigi, I love what you do, man. You know that. And I can't wait for output next year from you. I'm super happy that you're working full time, Bitcoin only. And I couldn't be more grateful for the work that you put out. And I'm sure many people listening share that sentiment. So thank you for all the work that you do. And thanks to 21ism for the great work that they're doing and putting this whole series together. It's just another example of the amazing creativity and the amazing commitment that people have to this space. So it's an honor to be a part of it all.
Absolutely. And I can only echo that. And I want to say thanks as well to you. I think your podcast is just unique in the space, and I love listening to it. And also just thanks to all the artists and all the writers and everyone who's putting out content. I mean, I'm really like, I feel like such a hack, because I'm, like I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants and just repeating what, for example, Pierre Rochard and Bitstein wrote in like 2013, 2014. So that's how I feel like, and so everyone who just put out content and continues to do so, I'm eternally grateful that there are so many great Bitcoiners that invest so much time in it and just educate everyone for free. It's insane. It's so cool to be a part of it. So I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. All right, brother. Until next time, take care of yourself.
Next time, John. Bye bye.
See you, buddy.
$10 bill. This is garbage. This is garbage. That's going to zero. That's going to zero. This is going to zero too. Euros are going to zero. The yen's going to zero. The Chinese currency is going to zero. It's all going to zero against Bitcoin. If you don't understand that yet, you're going to be be impoverished. You're going to be on the street. You're going to be begging. You're going to be out of business. You're going to be toast. Do you know that with the Bitcoin I have, I can buy any freaking senator or congressman I want? I make the laws. He who has the Bitcoin makes the laws. We're not gonna just sit around and let the goddamn congressman tell us what to do. We got the capital. We make the laws.